My name is Travis Lee Bailey. I'm an American lawyer living in Moscow, Russia since approximately 2015. I'm standing right now in front of the British Embassy and the Luhansk-Square, which was recently renamed by popular vote by Moscow. I'm also standing in front of the bridge where this is the White House that was bombed by the proxy of Britain, the collective West, and America in 1993, killing hundreds of people. And this is the bridge where the tanks fired. And then this is one of the Seven Sisters across the bridge. I have never served in the military. I have never worked for any intelligence agency in any country. And I've never worked as a contractor for any intelligence agency for any country. But I served in the United States Peace Corps Ukraine in Odessa from the day that Russian President Putin became president in December 1999 to 2002. Since I have not personally killed someone as many CIA and military people have, they may argue that I cannot speak about this war. I disagree. My first book was published in Ukraine in 2002. My second book was published in 2007 about the drug war in Colombia. My third book, Why Don't Russians Smile? The Definitive Guide to the Difference Between Russians and Americans, was published in 2021 and is available on Amazon.com. Today is Sunday, the first week of August, 2002. I know that Ukraine has lost the war. Of course the war is not over, but it is lost. Let me show you why. This has become an artillery duel. Russia fires 50,000 shells a day, 10 times more than Ukraine. The Washington Post says that Ukraine is almost completely out of ammunition and there are no replacements in the Soviet area ordnance. Don't believe the American propaganda or the British propaganda, which is sponsored by MI6 and the CIA and FBI. As reported by YouTube channel The Duran's Alexander, former U.S. Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter's prediction came true. All of the American and NATO howitzers shipped to Ukraine have been destroyed or cannot be repaired. On June 10th, the Post reported that Ukraine is suffering 1,000 casualties a day, including 200 killed. The rate of casualties is doubled in just 3 weeks in Donbass alone, a small part of the war in the northeast of Ukraine. Other Ukrainians and military officials put the figure at 200 to 500 killed a day. Ukrainian military officials. Let's put that in perspective. Vietnam was America's last truly bloody war. We Americans lost 60,000 men in 10 years. That's about 6,000 killed every year with a much smaller population. Ukraine is losing 6,000 soldiers killed every month. This is a death casualty rate 12 times higher than we suffered in Vietnam. But you have to then look at the populations of both countries. Before the war broke out, Ukraine had 43 million people, but with refugees, it's down to just 38 million today. The U.S. population during Vietnam numbered about 200 million. So our population is roughly 5 times larger than Ukraine's on a per capita basis. This means that their casualty rate is roughly 60 times greater than the U.S. suffered during the very bloody war in Vietnam. As the Duran YouTube channel states, and everyone agrees, Ukraine has fought with courage, but no nation can sustain such casualty rates for long. Ukraine is finished. On June the 12th, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg all but admitted that Ukraine would soon be forced to sue for peace. He said the only question is, what price are you willing to pay for peace? How much territory, how much independence, how much sovereignty are you willing to sacrifice for peace? Stoltenberg's remarks suggested that NATO recognizes that the war is lost. They do recognize that the war is lost. The Ukraine conflict now becomes an unpleasant distraction, especially in America, that simply needs to be wrapped up as far as NATO is concerned, and especially the United States. The sanctions war has failed. The entire financial might of the Western world was unleashed against Russia. Joe Biden swore that the Russian ruble would be crushed into dust. That they boasted of destroying the Russian economy and inspiring a revolution. They would create such hardships that Russia would revolt and overthrow their president. But today, the ruble is stronger than before the war. And this is such ignorance. I have lived here I've lived in the former Soviet Union since 1999. I have been around Russians for my entire life, and I have lived in Moscow since 2015. This is complete nonsense. Either Biden is demented, uninformed, or he's lying, and I bet it's the later. This year it has been the strongest of all currencies, the ruble. Russia inflation peaked around 15% and is expected to subside. But as their inflation tops out Europe's and America's, has just begun skyrocketing dangerously. Even this morning, which was in June, the price of Bitcoin dropped 5,000 points just overnight. The stock market is becoming extremely erratic, and Biden's attempts to strangle Russia trade has failed. Far from blocking their trade from other nations, The Economist magazine reports that Russia is generating a record trade surplus with $1 billion a day flowing in from oil and gas. Russia's $250 billion trade surplus more than doubled its surplus in the year before the war. I'm standing in front of the British Embassy. I just want to show you the sign. It's the Luhansk People's Republic Square, which is right across here on this street. I will do a video of that in a second. It's a square that's right in front of the British Embassy. And Luhansk People's Republic is the People's Republic that was bombed mercilessly by the collective West, including Britain and America and NATO, for through Ukraine, and 14,000 people died. And there was a poll, and they decided to the people of Moscow decided online to rename it the Lugansk, just like the American embassy has the Donbass. This is the British embassy. It's the little B word of America. America took over the colonization, the world colonization, with a friendlier face. Despite sanctions, Russia has forged stronger ties with China, India, South Africa, Iran, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, all of which continue trading at enhanced levels with Russia. Important countries in the global south are refusing to obey Washington's order to impose sanctions. Unlike China, independent countries fear the U.S., and they resent being told who they may and may not trade with. Dictating sanctions policy to sovereign nations is diminishing the world's respect for America. As I have shown on my YouTube channel, from the outset of the war, Russians have never experienced shortages of food, housing, heating, fuel, or gasoline. Anyone who expects Russians to crack from the loss of Gucci purchases or Big Mac hamburgers do not understand the Russian psyche. Hopes of ousting President Putin have died, and we're so unrealistic and so naive. It's an insult to everyone's intelligence that Biden and the collective West said that they could do that. As the Duran YouTube channel predicted, on March 1st, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson predicted that sanctions would bring down the Putin regime. Since then, Boris Johnson has nearly been ousted himself in a parliamentary vote of no confidence. As the Duran predicted on the Duran on YouTube, on June 19th, 2022, 2 days ago, Macron's party lost major seats in the French elections. And since then, there's the Zelensky curse. Boris Yeltsin, the clown Boris Yeltsin, is now being kicked out. And the biggest reason is because of his war. President Joe Biden will assuredly become a lame duck president in November 2022 as Republicans sweep both the Senate and House. At the same time, President Putin's popularity rose to 83%, which is greater than any of his Western counterparts. Meanwhile, the propaganda war is unraveling. At the outset of the war, the United States unleashed carefully orchestrated barrage of anti-Russian propaganda. All dissenting voices were blocked from the media. RT.com was blocked in Britain, in Germany, in America. Any dissenting voices. I've had problems, and anybody else that tries to speak up against the MI6 and the CIA are silenced. According to the BBC, scientifically, the United States is an oligarchy. The oligarchy American and Western media breathlessly reported the dramatic exploits of someone called the Ghost of Kiev. A pilot so skillful that he shot down an incredible 40 Russian jets before heroically dying in battle. But like Russians hiring contractors to kill American Afghanistan in 2021, the Ghost of Kiev was a complete hoax, probably perpetrated by the CIA, which is working hand in hand with the Ukrainian government today. It was a media concoction, a fiction, a fraud that never existed at all. Again, according to the BBC, look it up on the internet, BBC, scientifically, the United States is an oligarchy. And they say that Russia is an oligarchy. There was another important false report about Ukrainian border guards trapped by the Russian Navy on Snake Island. Ukraine reported that they refused to surrender, cursed their tormentors, and fought to the death. Ukraine President Zelensky even announced that they would each receive the nation's highest honor, the Hero of Ukraine. But this too was a fraud and a hoax. Those guards facing Russian warships actually did the sensible thing and surrendered without a fight. They were taken unarmed aboard a Russian vessel and returned to Ukraine as part of a prisoner swap. In 2000, I was reading a book. I was reading The Economist magazine, a hyper-neocon magazine, and one of the most popular magazines read by the intellectual elite. And that article said that that Russia was actually the country that won the war, not America. And the contributions of Russia was what won the war. And this was in 2000, and I was being lied to. You are being lied to. The Ukrainians are not winning the war. Britain is not winning the war in this proxy battle. America is not winning the war in this proxy battle. Russia is. And it's a lie that's killing many of my Ukrainian friends. I'm standing in the middle of Luhansk Park. It was recently renamed by a Pole. And you have Sherlock Holmes and Watson over here. This is part of the failed and former neo-colonizer, which has now been taken over by the United States. This is the British Embassy here in Moscow, Russia. And this is the park that, through polling, they decided that it was going to be renamed. The Duran YouTube channel reports regularly that Ukraine lies and inflates figures constantly. Like in the ISIS fighters that America supported in Syria, Ukraine also uses human shields and mines and booby traps hospitals. Ukraine's use of concocted stories like these puts into question not only those reports, but others claiming war crimes or battlefield victories. Yet until recently, the US and NATO unquestionably cited inaccurate Ukraine assessments of the war. Recently, however, oligarch news outlets have begun acknowledging the possibility of a Ukrainian defeat. On June 10th, the Newsweek reported that even the deputy head of Ukrainian's military intelligence had admitted that Ukraine was at risk of losing the war to Russia. Like Vietnam and Afghanistan, the first cracks are forming, and soon the world must come to grips with the reality the war is lost. Americans are also losing interest in the war. On June the 13th, 2022, the British outlet The Express reported a poll showing that Americans think that the shortage of baby formula is 5 times more important than the war in Ukraine. Americans willing executioners. Only as long as it isn't on their doorstep, they don't care. That's human nature. Only 5% of the population, the American population, see Ukraine as a top priority compared with 36% who worry about inflation the economy and jobs. 5% now believe that sanctions have hurt the U.S. more than Russia. Americans are fickle, and they have moved on Europe's biggest loser in the war. U.S. sanctions blocked Europe from using reliable, low-cost Russian gas and oil. We Americans forced them to import costly liquefied natural gas shipped from America, and it gives more money to the gas lobby. Greedy big American oligarchy oil companies make more record profits. U.S. sanctions have battered Europe, which relies heavily on imported Russian commodities and fuel. Americans' infatuation with alternative energy has over years compelled Europeans to rely on undependable solar and wind power. Restricting access to Russian oil and gas makes the coming winter a time of great peril for Europe. Because of this conflict with Russia, the Duran Alexander predicts that by 2032, everyone will recognize that Europe has become an economic backwater. Everyone in the world. Europe is going to become an economic backwater, including Britain. One key U.S. military objective has always been to block Germany from opening its vital Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline from Russia to Germany. That pipeline, an idea of Germany, was built by several countries over a span of 11 years. It was intended to double the gas flow to Germany and the rest of Europe and to guarantee their energy security. It was supposed to open in 2022. But after spending their fortune on the pipeline, the U.S. has rendered this massive project useless in order to shift the market to American liquefied natural gas and make Europe dependent on America. Actions like these show that Europe no longer enjoys full sovereignty. It is now subordinate to the whims of London and Washington. Before the war, Europe operated with moderate defense budgets. Russia was no threat, and China was an important trading partner, secure with its neighbors. And yesterday, this week, the beginning of August, what I'm going to call Nancy's War, Nancy Pelosi went to China with the support of the neocons, and now America is going to start a fight and a war with China. Germany chooses to maintain just 200 operational tanks, but war hysteria has forced Germany and other NATO countries into an unnecessary arms race that will impose enormous increases on European defense costs for many years and enrich the immoral American congressional military-industrial complex. Ironically, the march to war has effectively subordinated the European Union to NATO, thus restoring Great Britain to its position of dominance over continental Europe despite Brexit. Now nuclear war still looms. The Duran YouTube channel warns that this crisis is worse than the 1916 Cuban Missile Crisis. Scott Ritter, who went face-to-face against Joe Biden, who supported the Iraq War and his war criminal, he stated that that he predicted there's going to be a war in China by the end of 2022, and it looks like he's going to be correct because of Nancy Pelosi and the neocons. I lived in Odessa from 2000 to 2002. In the American coup of the democratically elected leader of Ukraine in 2014, 48 Ukrainians died. They were burned alive in a fire caused by the anti-Russian crowd. No one has been charged with those crimes. The revolution led to the Minsk II agreements, which NATO members France and Britain and Ukraine were supposed to follow. Instead, Ukraine wages a war for 8 years against Russian-speaking Donbass, killing 14,000 people. I am at the Smolenskaya metro, which is right next to the British Embassy, and please like and subscribe if you like this video, it's really important because I have been blocked by YouTube, and I've had many problems with YouTube because of the pro military industrial complex attitude of YouTube. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. It helps me get the word out. Also, I'm on Telegram at Ukraine War. You could look me up at Travis Lee Bailey, at Moscow American on Telegram. And thank you so much for watching this video. The United States is on the wrong side of history. Britain is on the wrong side of history. And the wars of millions of people dying, like in Iraq, is going to stop. And Russia and China are the ones that are going to stop it. So it is your choice to decide if you want to stay in the collective West or you want to move to countries which are actually supporting human rights around the world and who are actively fighting the most violent country in the world today. Internationally, the United States is the most violent country in the world. Please like and subscribe.